How's it going, guys? We're doing the Yoga Sutras second pada today. There's going to be an ongoing study. Some of the sutras are outdated with the advent of science. So those sutras I will definitely let you know. But it says repeated study of the sutras is essential. So the second pada is practice, Sutra 2.1. The actions of yoga are religious austerity, recitation of the sutras, and devout worship of whatever created this reality. There it is right there. Recitation of the sutras, religious austerity. So that leaves some questions. I have 4 translations for this. My translation is a comparative reasoning translation, the only one who does comparative reasoning translations, multiple translations for each sutra. This way, you don't need to read a commentary, but if you read each one, it'll give you the full definition. The second translation, 2.1, is burning earnestness in practice, study of the self, and surrender to God are the constituents of yoga. So burning earnestness in practice, what is that in yoga? Asana, which is the physical practice of yoga. Pranayama, which is the breath work. Concentration. Sense withdrawal, that's drawing your senses inwards towards the soul instead of letting them always go out towards the world. Then dhyana, which is stilling the mind. And then samadhi. So those are the earnest practices. Here, the third translation. I like this one. If you want, you can leave a comment below. Any questions or comments? Third translation. Accepting pain as help for purification, study of spiritual text, and surrender to the Supreme Being are the acts of yoga. Two. Practicing yoga reduces the hindrances to spiritual enlightenment. Second translation, 2.2. The goal of yoga is to put an end to afflictions and achieve samadhi. Third translation for 2.2. Discipline, study, and surrender to God reduce obstacles and bring absorption. So what is this? If you go back to the first pada, it has the 10 hindrances to enlightenment and the 5 disturbances that accompany the hindrances. Sutra 2.3. Thanks for joining. Ignorance, egotism, desire for pleasure, aversion to pain, and fear of death are the 5 afflictions which disturb the equilibrium of consciousness. So here, these are the 5 afflictions. Second translation. The 5 obstacles to spiritual enlightenment are lack of wisdom, self-centeredness, attachment, hatred, and clinging to bodily life. See, I like when they say desire and aversion because you have the 2 polarities. The one polarity is pulling you towards something, and the other polarity is pushing you away from something. And the more that we become averse, or means ill will, means to press against, the more we press against, the more we don't want something to happen, the more that hatred and stress seem to appear. But fear of death, most people have fear of death. The fear of death, we're always looking to stock things, save things, worried about losing our house, this other thing. A lot of these stresses come from fear of death. The mental obstacles are ignorance, egotism, attachment, hatred, and grasping at impermanence. Sutra 2.4. Lack of wisdom is the source of all suffering. So why are you having these afflictions? Why are you stressed out? Why are you in pain? Why are you worrying? Because you don't have the right wisdom. Sutra 2.5. Grasping at things that are impermanent, misjudging the pure and impure, aversion to pain, desire for pleasure, and self-centeredness are caused by lack of wisdom. Sutra 2.6. Egotism is when one considers themselves to be the mind and the body. So in yoga, they say you're the Purusha, you're the seer, you're the soul, you're the consciousness that's actually experiencing it. And you're experiencing it through the mind and the body. I'll give the second translation for Sutra 2.6. Egotism is the identification of the soul with the instruments of the five gross senses: sight, hearing, smell, taste, and feeling. Sutra 2.7. Pleasure results in desire and emotional attachment. Sutra 2.8. The mental impressions left by pain result in hatred. See, so these two sutras are extremely important. 2.7 and 2.8. Attachment comes from the experience of pleasure. So pleasure results in emotional attachment. 2.8, the mental impressions left by pain result in hatred. So when we experience pleasure, we like things. We want more of it. When we experience pain, we hate it. We don't like pain. The third translation for 2.8 is hatred comes from the experience of unhappiness. So we hate things because they made us unhappy. Sutra 2.9. Attachment to life and self-preservation are the most subtle hindrance. Even the wise struggle with this affliction. So when you're stressed out, when you're worried, when you meditate, if you follow it down all the way to the source, it's because you're afraid to die. You're trying to cling to life. I'll give the second translation for this one. Longing for life flows of its own accord. It is firmly established even in wise people. Third translation. Fear of death is built in the flesh for human survival. No one is above this. Sutra 2.10. Hindrances and fetters can be relinquished by eliminating self-centeredness and returning the mind to clarity, which is this natural state. Second translation for this. Hindrances are to be minimized and eradicated by introspection. Third translation. All four translations for Sutra 2.10 are important. By returning them to their original source, these afflictions can be overcome while they are still in subtle form. So when we look inwards at the afflictions, when we look inwards at the stress, when we look inwards at the worry, when we look inwards at the pain, by looking inwards and introspecting it, you can overcome it. And they go back into their subtlest form. They don't arise in your soul or your spirit. These obstacles can be destroyed by resolving them back into their primal cause, which is the ego. The ego, I also want to call it the personality. Your personality, what makes you, you. Through practice of meditation, the fluctuations of consciousness created by gross and subtle afflictions are silenced. Second translation for 2.11. The hindered mind states can be overcome through meditation. So why are we meditating? We're meditating to overcome the hindered mind states. Third translation. By being mindful of the present moment, the active defilements of the mind can be destroyed. See, these sutras are extremely important. That some of the sutras are more important than the others. Some of the sutras are not very important or outdated. Some of the other sutras are extremely important and have to be studied and learned, and these are some of them. Sutra 2.12. Our previous actions and reactions have been good or bad. Due to our previous experience, we either like or dislike things. This causes afflictions. Our previous actions and reactions are stored in the Akashic record and may ripen at any time during this life or the next. Second translation. The hindrances are rooted in accumulative imprints of past lives. It is because of our previous actions and reactions that our current and future situations occur. Moving right along to Sutra 2.13. As long as the idea of a separate self exists, it will give rise to lifespan, experiences, and the type of birth one takes. Now, when they say separate self, right? Like, say you form an opinion on something. You make an opinion on something. Why do you have that opinion? It's due to your personality and your past experiences and your likes and your dislikes, right? So that is a separate self there. So you can see when you make opinion, whatever's making the opinion, that's the idea of a separate self. Sutra 2.14. Pleasure and pain are caused by merit and demerit, which is the result of our previous actions and reactions. So your actions and reactions cause merit and demerit. Merit causes joy and demerit causes pain. Sutra 215. Thanks for joining. Transformations cause misery, mental impressions cause suffering, and the conflict of the energetic forces of the universe cause discomfort. Therefore, wise and discriminative beings see that all life is tinged with pain and suffering. Now, here's another one. This is extremely important. It's telling you that the transformations, everything's constantly changing, so that causes misery. Because of your past memory impressions, it causes suffering. And because the energetic forces of the universe are always in conflict, it causes discomfort. Therefore, the wise see that all things, all life is tinged with pain and suffering. Second translation. The wise know that due to fluctuations, the way in which one attribute of the world conflicts with another, and latent mental impressions, that even pleasant experiences are tainted with sorrow. Knowing this, they remain estranged from them. Sutra 216. It is possible to prevent future suffering. Second translation, pain that has not yet come should be avoided. So here they're saying these are the causes for pain, and it's possible to eliminate the pain. I think that's extremely important. So, and here again, you see where the yogic texts are lining up with the Buddhist texts. Sutra 217. Okay, so this sutra is so important. Coming up as a Catholic, Jesus says, woe to him who loses his soul but gains the world. Well, guess what Sutra 217 says? Preventing contact between the soul and the perceivable world prevents future suffering. Okay, so when we do our pratyahara, okay, now if you're a yogi, you might know what pratyahara is. If you're not a yogi, you probably have no idea what pratyahara is. So pratyahara means starving the senses and withdrawing the senses. So pratya means food. And pratyahara means to bring the senses inwards. So say you're looking at television or you're eating or you're listening to music, your senses are going outwards. But in pratyahara, the senses are focused inwards towards realizing the soul. Then when you have the soul, you have to hold on to it. If you let it go and it comes back into contact with the world, you start to suffer again. I'll give the second translation. The cause of pain is the identification of the seer with the seen, and the remedy is in their disassociation. So the seer is what's actually seeing. And when it identifies with the world, that causes you to drop into samsara. Third translation. The cause of avoidable pain is the joining of the soul with the seen, mind, body, and physical plane of existence. Fourth translation. Preventing the soul from being attached to things experienced by the physical senses removes the cause of further suffering. So here they're telling you these are the afflictions. This is the cause of the afflictions. They explain how karma works, that your actions, your good actions and your bad actions cause pain and happiness. And in 217, they tell you how you can keep from experiencing pain by keeping the soul from becoming entangled in the physical world. How do you do that? You practice the 8 limbs of yoga. Sutra 218. Nature has the qualities of clarity, activity, and stillness. This, along with the elements and the senses, provides experience for the enjoyment and liberation of the soul. Sutra 219. The gunas initiate their material and energetic fluctuations, which are projected into the soul. These fluctuations are specific, non-specific, differentiable, and non-differentiable. What are the gunas? In yoga, the gunas are the driving forces of the universe. So the driving forces of the universe. Hello. So the driving forces of the universe change everything. So everything in the universe is in a state of change, yes? The gunas are what cause these changes. Those changes project fluctuations, they project into your soul. Sutra 220. The soul is only the pure power of seeing which observes the world through the mirror of the mind. Second translation. The seer is entirely pure and only observes, but it still perceives the world through conceptualism. Third translation. The soul is pure consciousness. It witnesses nature without being reliant on it. So all the soul can do is just experience. All the soul can do is just feel and observe. And it's observing it through the mind. So the mind is like the mirror or the glass, and the soul is observing through the glass. Sutra 221. What is experienced through the senses exists for the purpose of the soul's emancipation. So anything that you're experiencing, anything, happiness, joy, pain, sorrow, whatever you're experiencing, the purpose is to emancipate the soul from being reliant on physical reality for its happiness or unhappiness. Sutra 222. Spiritually enlightened beings are no longer affected by physical and energetic impermanent transmutation, but beings who have not attained this state are still affected. So as soon as you attain the goal, which is absorption of everything that you have in the present moment and complete and total non-attachment in a permanent state of focus, you're no longer affected by things. Even anything can go wrong and it doesn't upset you. You can experience the greatest pleasure and it doesn't make you over happy. You don't get elated or overexcited. Only when you reach the permanent state. So to reach the permanent state, they go over the 9 levels of samadhi, okay, of absorption, jhana, enlightenment. And the last one is nirbija samadhi, the state of absorption in the present moment that is permanent. You can no longer go back into samsara anymore. Sutra 223. The state of union between the soul and the seen is for the soul to discover its own true nature. Sutra 224. Lack of wisdom is the root cause of the soul become attached to the physical world. Sutra 225. Through proper knowledge, the light of wisdom dawns, destroying ignorance and liberating the soul from the perceivable world. Sutra 226. Steady, uninterrupted discernment eradicates ignorance, the source of pain. I'm going to give multiple translations for this, guys. I'm the only person who does comparative reasoning translations, and this is why, because when you're translating the text over from Sanskrit, you tend to lose some of the translation because English is more concise and Sanskrit is more broad with the words. They had less words in Sanskrit than they do in English. So here, the second translation, the vigilant, uninterrupted flow of discriminative knowledge in thought, word, and deed destroys ignorance. Sutra 227. Through the unbroken flow of discriminative awareness, one attains perfect wisdom, which is sevenfold. One experiences the end of the desire to know anything more, the desire to stay away from anything, the desire to gain anything new, the desire to do anything, sorrow, fear, and delusion. Because the mind states that you're in basically make up your reality. So if you're stressed out, worried, or in pain, you're like in a lower state of consciousness. But if you're happy, free from pain, calm, peaceful, you're in a higher state of consciousness. But that state, that peaceful state, that balanced state occurs when you practice the yoga through purity, through meditation, through wisdom. And you need all of them. Sutra 228. Through devout practice of the 8 limbs of yoga, impurities are destroyed and the crown of wisdom radiates gloriously. Sutra 229. The 8 limbs of yoga are universal morality, observances, steady, comfortable, aware posture, breath regulation, withdrawing the senses inward towards the soul, concentration, meditation, and absorption of consciousness in the soul, samadhi. Sutra 230. If you guys have any questions, put it in the comment and I'll help. Nonviolence, truthfulness, never stealing, abstaining from sexual activity, and non-possessiveness are the universal moralities. Sutra 231. These noble vows are universal and apply to any social class, location, time, or circumstance. Sutra 232. Purity, contentment, self-discipline, study, and worship of God are the observances. So those are the 5 or the 10 virtues of yoga, the 10 practices of yoga. And if you do these 10, all of the other virtues should follow these 10. Sutra 233. When disturbing negative thoughts arise, think of their opposite. Here's another one that's so important. Sutra 233. Second translation. Principles which oppose the yamas and niyamas are to be counted with discriminative knowledge. So when the disturbing thoughts arise, you're being mindful. You either think of their opposite or you introspect them back into the source. Sutra 234. When negative thoughts or actions are done, either directly or indirectly, or even approved of, it is caused by greed, anger, or delusion, and is either mild, medium, or intense in degree. Through introspection, the cycle of pain and ignorance is ended. So, for example, somebody cuts you off, and you're like, oh, you get angry, you wish them bad. Your lover cheated on you, and you get so upset, you get mad, then you want to harm him, you want to pop his tire or do something back to him. Or it could just be a thought. You're like, oh, I hate that guy. As soon as you okay the thought, it's negative karma, it's bad karma. It produces more suffering. So here they're saying that it's caused by greed, anger, or delusion, and it's either mild, medium, or intense. If you just introspect the thought, if you just sit there and contemplate the thought, the the cycle of pain and ignorance is ended. Because when you have the thought of revenge or the thought of anger, that thought is what's causing your pain. Now, I know you're going to say, well, what about people with arthritis? What about this? What about that? If you do the yoga asana properly, the physical body gets strong, and the physical weaknesses, the body has to get to a certain level of strength in order to achieve yoga. And that's why you see us doing the intense yoga poses or the martial arts and the working out and the training, because the body has to be strong. You can't meditate if the body's not strong. But ultimately, when you get to that level, it's the mental aspect which is causing the pain. Because when the thoughts are negative, it disturbs the elements within your body. And when it disturbs the elements in your body, it causes pain. Sutra 235. When you master nonviolence in speech, thought, and action, your aggressive nature is relinquished. All beings will then abandon hostility in your presence. Sutra 236. When one masters honesty, any words spoken instantly manifest into reality. Sutra 237. When you completely abandon stealing as an option, wealth and abundance will come to you. Sutra 238. Knowledge, vigor, valor, and energy flow to one who has mastered continence. Continence is chastity. Sutra 239. When one is free from greed for possessions, the details of previous births become known. So here, this one here, when you're meditating, memories come up. Now, when you go throughout the day, memories are constantly popping up, right? You walk past something, you look on the floor, you see something that reminds you of something. You look over to the right, you see somebody's shirt, it reminds you of something. So there's always memories coming up in the mind, and that's helpful to survive. If you see a snake, you have to know it's a snake. You have to know it's going to bite you. So your mind has that type of system. This is dangerous. I have to be careful. But when you're meditating, you're free from greed and possessions, the memories bubble up to the end, and supposedly here, you see your past lives. Sutra 240. As a result of practicing purity, one develops disinterest in contact with others for self-gratification. Second translation. Through cleanliness of body and mind, one develops a distaste for lust. Sutra 241. When the body is cleansed, the mind purified, and the senses controlled, joyful awareness needed to perceive the soul occurs. So here, how do we see the soul? How do we perceive the soul? By practicing the 8 limbs of yoga. And what it's saying is, as soon as the body is cleansed, the mind's purified, and the senses controlled, then the joyful awareness needed to perceive the soul occurs. Sutra 242. When one masters contentment, supreme joy is attained. So this is saying if you're not happy with what you have, you're not going to be happy with what you don't have. So say you want something and you get it. There's a time when you get it where you're so happy and content. In that time, you're content. But then, let's say it's a car. You buy a brand new Mercedes. You have the car. You're so happy for the first 4 years. Then all of a sudden, 5 years later, the brakes are going. You need to get work done on it. It's an older model. It has a ding in the bender. All of a sudden, it doesn't bring you happiness anymore. You're like, oh, it's a burden in the end, isn't it? So when you're meditating, you master on being completely and total content. When you're completely and totally content, that is supreme happiness, being contented. Sutra 243. By accepting but not causing pain, impurities of the body and senses are destroyed and higher powers are acquired. Here, another one. By accepting but not causing pain, impurities of the body and senses are destroyed and higher powers are acquired. So the yogi is supposed to accept pain for purification. Second translation, self-discipline burns away impurities and sparks a holy spiritual fire, giving one occult powers. When you attain this state, you'll notice occult powers. What you think will manifest instantly. You'll be able to feel the future, things like this. Sutra 244. Through devout study, higher understanding is achieved. That's why I'm holding this study group. You're supposed to recite the sutras repeatedly until you have them down, until you know them back and forth. So it takes study. You have to do the meditation. You have to live a certain way. You have to live by a certain moral code. And when you do this, all of them together lead you to the highest level. But it says you have to study. You can't do it without study. There has to be study. Self-study leads to God realization. Study of the spiritual text leads to spiritual enlightenment. Fourth translation. By repeated study of the holy words comes communion with one's chosen deity. Sutra 245. Surrender to God leads to perfection in samadhi. So here, you've done everything, right? You've gone to work, you lived your day, and now you're home and you're stressed out, you're worried. It's because as soon as you've done what you have to do, that there has to be a surrender. And surrender to God is what leads to that perfection. The second translation, by total surrender to the incoming energy of the universe, there is success in attaining the state of samadhi. What is samadhi? It's absorption, is what it is. Sutra 246. The posture should be steady, comfortable, and aware. Sutra 247. One has mastered asana when exertion becomes effortless and the mind is focused on infinity. So when you can sit there effortlessly and move your body effortlessly and your mind is focused on infinity. Through lessening the tendency for restlessness and meditating on the infinite, posture is perfected. Third translation. Asana is perfected by relaxation of effort and focusing on the multiverse. Sutra 248. After one has mastered asana, they will no longer be disturbed by pairs of opposites. So when you see us sitting doing the standing postures like this, I don't know if you guys practice Qigong. I practice Qigong. But when we're standing out there like this, when you master the body posture, which is perfect posture, it's effortless, you're no longer disturbed by pairs of opposites. I've been practicing many, many years, 15 years, but you'll notice it. You'll be standing there and like somebody walks by and you feel like a vibe, or you feel like an energy, or you feel like nervous, or you feel like anxious. But when you stand there good enough, it doesn't disturb you anymore. You can get into the states easier than to in the states and to reach the ultimate state, because the mind is either growing or it's going into mental decline, and it goes into mental decline so quickly. You can watch one movie and completely and totally lose all your studies. Like that's how serious it is. When you see the Buddha sitting meditating like that for days at a time, like it takes constant mindfulness. It has to be developed. And it's so easy to get derailed or forget the text. That's why the recitation of the text is so important. Sutra 249. After asana is mastered, regulation of inhalation and exhalation should be practiced. Now, in the yogic techniques, we do a lot of conscious breathing in, conscious breathing out, but the Buddha taught anapanasati, which is just being mindful of the breath. So here in yoga, they're saying regulation of the inhalation and exhalation, which is different from vipassana, which is what they do in the Buddhist, which is just awareness of the breath. And I practice both. By regulating the inhalation and exhalation, you can learn how to cultivate your energy more. Just observing the breath, there's less control. Sutra 250. The three movements of breath are inhalation, exhalation, and retention. They are either long or short and are to be regulated by space, time, and number. Sutra 251. There is a fourth kind of pranayama that is more subtle than the three gross aspects. Okay, so here, for all my energy people, for my energy workers, here it is in a 2,600-year-old text. If you do your breathing techniques, your pranayama techniques, there's a fourth kind of pranayama, which is what they're basically saying is there's an energy beyond your breath. And if you practice pranayama, you'll be able to access that kind of energy. Energy of the soul, energy of the spirit, energy of the elements. Sutra 252. When one masters breath regulation and awareness, the veil covering the light of knowledge is removed and true wisdom dawns. So when you're doing your pranayama, you're preparing the mind to remove the veil of ignorance, the ego, the personality, the intellect, the memory. And underneath it, there's a light of wisdom, which is the light of the soul. Sutra 253. When one is accomplished in the practice of pranayama, the mind becomes ready for concentration. So there's a prerequisite to be able to concentrate. And by doing the pranayama, you're preparing the mind for that concentration. When you access the breath, you're accessing the front part of the brain and the frontal lobe. And the frontal lobe has to be developed. Sutra 254. Pratyahara is withdrawing the senses, mind, and consciousness away from contact with external objects and inwards towards the soul. So this here, I can't express how important this sutra is. Pratya means food. So pratyahara, you're drawing the senses away from the food inwards. So anything you feed your senses is food. A movie, music, incense, anything you feed the senses in yoga is considered to be food. So pratyahara is when you draw the senses inwards towards the soul instead of letting them run outwards all the time. 255. One gains complete mastery over the sense organs from the practice of pratyahara. So when you do that, you'll gain mastery over the sight, the hearing, the smell, the taste, the touch. Because the five senses, they always want to feel something good and not feel something painful. By doing pratyahara, you gain mastery over your senses. So then a bad day, it doesn't affect you. Or if you have intense desire or craving, you master that. That's it for the second pada. Thanks so much for joining. My book is Yoga Sutras by Vincent Ferra. It's available on Amazon. Please give it a buy. I'm also going to put the link in the description below. Thanks so much, guys. Be well.